Welcome to Todd Talk. Today I'm going to tell you about the time I saw a dead seal.
Todd Talk is brought to you by Moblimity. We're a cult.
So ever since I was a young person, I have gone camping. Used to go camping with my family, have gone camping with friends and solo as an adult. And while I've camped kind of all over the place, most of the camping I do is on the Oregon coast. The southern coast is, in my opinion, the most interesting part of the Oregon coast. Mainly because it's very geologically dramatic. There's these big rocks and, you can see the tectonic plates doing their thing, and it's really picturesque and very, very cool to see. There's one campground on the southern coast that is at the end of a very, very long road that just dead ends at a cape. A cape is basically a big cliff that overlooks the ocean. And all around this cape, there are different beaches. Some of the beaches are very sandy and family-friendly. Some of them are a little bit more remote or rocky. This particular beach is in a cove, and the cove is about 100 yards wide, facing south. And it's at the very bottom of a very steep trail that leads down to it. While the trail is paved, it is kind of out of the way, and it is steep enough that I think most people might not bother to go all the way down there, especially if you were older or afraid of heights or had little kids who you didn't want falling down the trail. So I don't think it gets visited nearly as much as the other beaches. The thing that's neat about this cove is it sort of catches everything. As stuff kind of drifts by, it gets scooped up by this cove and it all washes up on the beach. So you find all kinds of neat things like big pieces of driftwood, all kinds of seaweed. You find really cool rocks and things that have fallen off boats. And the beach is just littered with stuff. So there was one year I went down there and the beach was really just busy and littered with stuff. It was a very, very high tide, and I think there had been some storms. And as I was down there, I was just poking around, and there's just tons and tons of seaweed and driftwood and, all kinds of crazy stuff. And as I'm walking along, I see something really peculiar. It looks like a glass bottle that is like milk glass, like white, like some sort of jug that was mostly intact. There was a couple of holes knocked in it and that kind of thing. And it looked like this large glass bottle was stuck into the end of a log. Now, I'd never seen a white glass bottle of that size, and I also don't understand why somebody would take it and stick it into the end of a log. But that's what I saw. And it is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. How did this weird white glass bottle end up here? Where did it come from? How did it not break into a million pieces? And why would somebody take it and affix it to the end of a log? So I got like 2 feet from this thing, and I'm kind of looking at it and examining it, and I'm like, what is this? So I stand up and I take in a little bit of the surroundings, and I realize this is not a log. This is a seal. And that's not a bottle. That's its skull. Somehow, the seal is still completely covered in fur, except for just its face. Its face is missing all of its fur and its muscle and its skin. I'm not sure what happened to it, how only its face was missing, the skin and the fur, if perhaps it was, in the water, but the face was exposed, or vice versa, and somehow, scavengers got to it. It was really peculiar. I'm going to show you a picture of what I saw. So here you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It looks like a white glass bottle stuck into a log. And then this next picture, a little bit more artistic, but shows you how close I got to the thing. So I kind of marveled at it a little bit, took a couple pictures, and I went and talked to one of the rangers up at the state park and, told them that I found this and, what happens. And they basically said that they're large enough that there's not much they can do. Usually the tide will take them or scavengers will come along and eat them. So that was that until the next day, and I decided to go back down there and do more poking around. And as I'm walking down that very steep trail, I see really big birds that are kind of posted out around where the seal was. And as I started walking down the beach, they started to scuttle away a little bit. When I got about 30 feet away from it, I hit this wall of stink that was so overwhelming that it was physically impenetrable. Almost like it was so stinky, it almost had a color. It was so intense and putrid that I almost threw up on the spot. My nose and my eyes and my salivary glands, just everything went insane to try to wash this odor out of my face. It had been sitting in the sun all day, and, the birds had pecked a couple of holes in it and that sort of thing. And that was just enough to release whatever vileness was inside this thing. I recoiled back and I took like these deep gasping breaths to just try to clear out my airways, and I could not get anywhere near that thing. The only other time I've ever smelled anything that disgusting was when I was much, much younger. I was doing some house sitting for my folks. They were on vacation. And typically all I would do is I would go over, I'd water their plants, I would get their mail, and I'd sit and I'd watch TV for a while. So one night I go over there and I pop the key in the door and I open it up, and inside immediately is that smell of death. It's an unmistakable smell. It's really dark and sweet, and it really kind of rattles you. So my first thought is maybe an animal got in their house and died. So I start walking room to room to see what is going on. And when I get to the kitchen, what I realize is I had left the freezer door cracked ever so slightly. And in the middle of summer, with nobody home and no air conditioning on, it didn't take long for everything to thaw out. And in the base of this freezer was just this pool of meat juice and ice cream and berries and popsicles. I felt terrible, of course, because everything in the freezer was now bad. But I think I got a fair punishment cleaning out the freezer and just gagging my way through this vile slop. Anyway, since I found that seal, I have since found a couple of other dead sea mammals. I did find another seal once, and I did find a sea lion. But neither was nearly as interesting, and neither was nearly as disgusting.